I gotta change the name of this. I'm just gonna call it Effed Up Stories for now, and I'll change it later. I think we're I think. Well, I'm just waiting for it to say we're live streaming. Okay, we are live.
We
All
are
right.
live.
Now I
I
don't.
don't think. Oh yeah, I just got the email.
You just got the email. I don't know if we're gonna get anybody tonight. I'll start off. Actually, I don't know if it's just. I don't know what the fuck to say. There's no one there yet.
We'll just give it a moment.
I'll show you this. You can see my stream, right?
Uh, again.
Hello, Agent Shadow. See this, Ryan? Wait, no. I'm waiting for it to show up on the screen. This is the mug that Isaac got me for Christmas. Obviously, it wasn't really Isaac. It was Brittany, but
Hold it up.
oh fuck, I got
Well,
my
your
hand
hands
covering it.
covering it, but
World's greatest dad.
oh yeah, yeah. You know those aren't true, right?
At this time, it is.
This.
Hello, everybody. Okay, we got a couple people there. We got Agent Shadow, Flakita, Don Cochran, Thomas Kemp, Storyteller, Josie Lopez. Hello, everybody. I guess I'll start this by just saying that we were gonna do this Monday. I'm still sick. I'm living on Tylenol cold, but essentially what it came down to, we were gonna do it Wednesday, and then I'm not convinced I'm gonna feel any better tomorrow. So, yeah, I just pumped back some meds, and we're gonna do this tonight. So, yeah, I mean, is all up. Hopefully everybody gets their notification and we get some people in here. But yeah, so we're gonna do some more user submissions. Before we start that, though, we'll do the usual. Hello, everybody. I am welcome to Effed Up Stories. I'm your host, Will Pender,
And I'm your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
and something that I want to just throw out to you guys right now, and you guys can let your wheels turn in your head for a bit. I'd be interested to hear everybody's input later on in the show. Just something that Ryan and I, like we talked about recently. It's going to seem really lame compared to the stories we cover, but because it involves me, I want to know. Basically, I was telling Ryan how the last couple of months, I'd be sitting like downstairs and I'd hear this distinctive, like, I guess a bang upstairs. It sounds exactly like when my cat is on like one of the beds and he jumps off onto the floor. Only my cat would be right next to me in the rec room. And it's become so common over the months that my wife and I regularly just refer to it as like, oh, there's that ghost sound again. And, because like we regularly hear it among some other things that we hear. And so I was mentioning this to Ryan not too long ago. And that's when Ryan told me that he's had the exact same thing happening to him for the past couple of months, which any theory that I had come up with at that point is now moot. Because at first I was thinking, well, maybe the people who owned this house before, maybe they had a dog or something that died, and but Ryan and I having that exact same thing, well, that makes it a little stranger. So you guys just let it turn in your heads a little bit, and later on in the show, if you want to give us, I guess, your thoughts on what you think it is, that would be great. One other thing I want to mention. Something we're going to do, like, it's not going to be every episode or anything like that, but it's just a broadening of, I guess, some of the things that we cover that I'd be interested to hear from you guys. Anyone who's had, like, a really effed up story involving, not necessarily paranormal, but maybe you escape being murdered, or, like, a really eerie case. We're going to do it on a case-by-case basis, but maybe you narrowly escaped being murdered by somebody, or had like just a really fucked up experience some night camping or whatever. Just something really that's scary, that is along those lines, but not necessarily paranormal. On a case by case basis, we'd start to like to tell those. And in fact, if there's any murder stories that you know of that's within your your story or your family's story or whatever, well, we'd like to hear
So
those too.
yes, if you've ever been murdered, we'd love to hear
No,
your
well,
story.
I mean your family. If you're someone in your family, or if you came across somebody that was murdered, and it's just a weird, fucked up situation. We definitely want to, look into covering those as well. Hello, Murdoch, and anybody new that came in while I was just rambling. So I got a bunch of stories. Actually, we still have a lot of submissions, but I got 4 giant stories here that came in from what's her name, Rivet Amethyst. We've covered one of her stories here before. Let me throw the chat room up into our feed here. Yeah, I know. Although Buckley's is terrible, I'm Tylenol cold is is working well for me thus far. The fuck? Why won't this pop out now? Open, not in a new tab. Fucking
Stage fright?
computers. Stage fright. I don't get stage fright.
No. Why the thing won't pop out?
Oh, maybe.
Let's see.
Okay.
So, yeah. Hey to my brother. Always great to have you join us here on the stream. Um, David, something about a drug story. Should take my drug trip story. Hey,
I just cracking up at Jay Jenkins. I got murdered once. It puts me right in mind of Monty Python with when I used to come home. I got chopped in two with a bread knife, or I had to eat a lump of cold poison a half an hour before I went to bed. And anyway, all right. So sorry, were you gonna say something before I start?
um, oh no, I was just going back through the messages, see if there was anything there. No, I haven't recently run into any specially abled children recently, and yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so,
Anyway,
so we're gonna start with Amethyst Rivet stories here. I'll start with okay. So this one is called. Actually, there's no name. This is my first time through it. I have no idea what I'm going to encounter. So you guys can think of this as Christmas. We're opening gifts. We're all going to bask in the glory of what this is at the same time. So I don't know if this was all a dream or if it really happened. The event was completely random. There were no strange occurrences leading up to it, and there were no weird or spooked out feelings. It just simply happened. It was a completely ordinary day. I had work all day and then went home, where I spent the rest of the evening with my boyfriend. Obviously, this is from her point of view. After he went home for the night, I got ready for bed. Now, I'm a little odd with my bedtime ritual. I have my laptop hooked up to my TV via HDMI cable so that I can enjoy the internet and my downloaded content through the convenience of a larger screen and better quality speakers. I tend to play the same movie every night when I go to bed. It's comforting and drowns out all the noises that occupy the house at night. Strange noises happen often, and although they can be unsettling at the best of times, it gets annoying that they wake me up so much throughout the night. So I put on the movie and promptly go to bed. It's all normal until I wake up at some point in the night to find my room completely dark. I looked over to see that my TV and laptop had been turned off. Very strange, since you have to get up to turn off either of them. I blinked several times to make sure that I was awake, then reached for my phone that was left to charge next to my bed to see what time it was. Although it was on the charger, it wouldn't light up when I tried to turn it on, and had to press the button several times before it seemed to register what I was doing, and finally lit up. I checked the time, but I don't remember what time it was. I think it must have been around 4 in the morning. I often wake up around that time anyway. I looked back into the darkness of my room and heard my laptop make a beep noise, like it was restarting itself. So that's what I thought it was. My computer was updating and now was restarting. And when I woke up again, it would be on the startup screen. Although that didn't explain the TV. The brand name lights up different colors when it's on or off, but it was completely off, like it was unplugged. But I've learned not to investigate these kinds of things, so I just went back to bed, turning back to my room. I fell back to sleep almost instantly, where I had a creepy dream. I was in a body that was not my own, with a group of people I didn't know, but the person who I was seeing through considered, they were considered friends. We were somewhere that was unfamiliar to us and had decided to venture about the place. The area was wooded but had dirt roads that led into remote houses scattered about the place. We were walking along the main road when an old pickup truck blazed by us, kicking up dirt as it passed and started to veer off into the hillside road before it stopped, as if to regard us. It started to back up a little like it was going to turn around, and we all became a little scared, completely out of our element. We quickly decided that we would go back where we came, and as I turned around, I checked over my shoulder to see the truck continue down the side road and disappear out of sight. That's when I noticed it. In the middle of the road was a dark mass, so far away that I couldn't tell if it was an animal or human, but I knew it was watching us. I knew it was malevolent. Someone else in the group had spotted the thing too, and screamed. Suddenly, we were all running as fast as we could to get off of the road and back to where our car was. I glanced back over my shoulder, and my heart jumped to my throat as I saw it was chasing after us at inhuman speed. I was terrified, but I looked again, and I saw it was gaining on us, covering the distance to us in too short of a time. Every time I looked back, it was closer, despite our frantic running. We seemed to just be running in place. Even though this thing was gaining on us, I couldn't make out what it was. It was still just this huge black mass. The last I looked back, it was on us. I tried to let out a scream, but I couldn't as it leaped onto me. I woke up startled and looked around my room to find my TV and laptop was on, and the media player was up as if a movie was done playing and now was idle. This would have been completely normal if I knew that both were turned off earlier. If my laptop had restarted, it would be at the startup prompting me for the password, and the TV would still be off in either case. So that's story number one. Let's discuss this, Ryan. So I told the story. Do you want to offer your input first?
Well, that's a bit of a weird one. So again, I'm trying to keep up with the chat and listen to you. The bulk of what I got from that was this weird animal-like creature.
Okay, no. Okay,
Yeah.
let me summarize it, then we'll go. I get it. I know it's hard to do both. So basically, what she did, she had this dream. Well, before she had her dream, she watches the same movie every night. She sets it up on her laptop, and she hooks it up to her TV. Like via HDMI, you get a better picture, better sound in your laptop, right?
Yeah, and she wakes up and everything's turned off.
Right. Well, when she wakes up, her TV is off, her laptop is off. And at first I was thinking, power outage, right? But the point that she made, and it's true, is that first of all, if her computer had come back up, it would be at the login screen, not into a movie. The second part being that, and this is what I thought of, is that a laptop, unless the power went out for a considerably long time or the battery was almost dead. I mean, if you got it plugged into a TV, you got it plugged into the wall anyway, right? You're not doing that overnight on a battery. So it most likely would have been plugged in, and unless the battery was dead and it wasn't plugged in, the battery would have went for a couple hours anyway. It's especially in standby mode, right? So And the other thing being that when she woke up and everything was off, she fumbled with her phone, and even that, she had trouble getting that to work. So after that, she had this bizarre dream, and I don't know what relation the dream might have had, if any, to what actually happened. I mean, it's a spooky dream, I guess, but she.
So the bulk of the experience being the strange.
Well, the interval, right? The fact that she wakes up and that everything is off, and when she wakes up again, it's not just on, like the power went out and came back on, because there was no way that the laptop.
It's in the middle of a movie.
Yeah, it couldn't have got itself back to where it was. You would have had to log in and all this different kinds of stuff, right? And furthermore, I guess. Just to bring it up, I guess, because she had this, she is trying to, I guess, to see the relevance of what her dream is. I had actually just heard from a fan of ours there the other day about a similar thing, where his dream ended up having, there was a weird part about it that kind of mimicked, when he woke up, real life kind of mimicked part of his dream. And I'll tell him the same thing or I'll tell you guys the same thing I told him. Is that, yes, there are dreams that are precognitive and stuff like that for sure, but dreams are, they're full of symbols and stuff like that. And, what different scientists have discovered as we sleep is that our brain basically defrags itself like a computer, organizes files, memories, and different things like that, into different, I guess, areas of our brain, optimizing how it works. And when you have these dreams that seem like more than dreams, I often wonder if it's not just, it's seeing the symbols of like our unconscious mind, like things that are picked up during the day or the weeks or the months that we didn't necessarily pick up on. But when we're seeing it in symbol form, it's like we're able to read something from it. Like maybe there's dangers or something that our subconscious mind picked up on that we didn't, and here we are able to pick up on it in a symbolic way while we're sleeping, right? We're able to read into that a little bit, so that's something that's interesting for sure. So
that's a very Carl Jung
right
take on the whole dreaming scenario. Like all these little things that you notice about your home over the course of a month that your brain notices, but you don't consciously recognize. And then you have a dream about your house catching on fire, and your house actually does catch on fire.
Right.
Because there was faulty wiring. Well, I mean, in regards to the story, I guess, my first go-to thought is some kind of sleepwalking, just either they partially woke up or she partially woke up and turned the video back on or something like that, and
that could be
fell back asleep. Because I know I've done some weird ass shit in my sleep, especially if I was drinking heavily right before I went to bed. Like, but I'll wake up and sleepwalk and.
See, I've never done that, but I know that scramble, and only you and I know who that is. But like he's gotten up in his sleep after drinking, of course, and put his boot in the fridge and went to sleep under someone's coffee table. So
yeah,
like that shit happens, right?
Yeah, sometimes your brain, that automatic thing that kicks in that stops you from moving while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Sometimes that cuts out either because of, drug or alcohol use, or just because, the human body isn't perfect. And
that being said, like while we can be completely ground based here with that, there is something to be said for having precognitive dreams and stuff. I mean, just as well, it's possible that her mind, her body, or her brain picked up on some kind of external stimuli that influenced the dream that she had. But I can't really explain the wake up in the middle part where everything is off. Like, unless, like you said, she got up and turned it on herself, or if she absolutely was aware when she got up and this happened, that's the Twilight Zone. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Something weird happened there.
So just a note. So as David asked for our email address. So it's will@effedupstories.com or ryan@effedupstories.com. If you want to submit a story, you can do that through our website, effedupstories.com.
Comes to both of us that way.
Exactly. Then you just got to submit it the one time, and it comes through. It's not going to be flagged as spam or something. Our email, our official email is kind of wonky sometimes, so that might be the best choice. I can't actually type into the chat because it blocks anything that looks like a website or email address.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I guess we should jump into our next story here.
All right. So this is story 2, all from the same person. So this happened early morning. Looks like March 8th, 2014. Anyway, so she had this creepy experience last night. Again, her wording. I went to bed early since I wasn't feeling well. A phone call from what I guess could only be a telemarketer woke me up at 12. Fuck those guys, right? Anyway, sorry. I didn't answer it because people shouldn't be calling so damn late. So a little later, probably around 2 or 3 in the morning this time, I'm woken once more. But this time it's to the sound of something trying to open my door. My door is really loose on its hinges, so it shakes easily, makes a lot of noise when it does. At first I thought it was my cat being annoying, but sometimes, something felt a little off. My cat tries to come into my room from time to time. She'll paw beneath the door as if to open it and meow like a mad thing to get her attention, or my attention. This time, as I looked at my door, and my room is dimly lit by the TV, I saw no paw, I see no shadow beneath the door, and there is absolutely no noise aside from the banging of my door as if something is trying to tear it off its hinges. Then I noticed the sound of my doorknob slightly jiggling. I'm getting pretty freaked out now, and there is no way I'm going to acknowledge this thing. After a solid 2 minutes of just staring at my door, it stops, and the house is silent again. I'm thinking that it's over, but the door next to me starts doing the same thing. So it's hopped from door to door. I was hoping this was really just my cat, but I was honestly too scared to investigate and for it to turn out to be something I was not prepared to accept. I got this sick feeling I should not investigate this. I shouldn't open that door. So I stayed in bed as the banging went back and forth between the 2 doors. At some point, I really thought my door was going to burst open. It got so violent. For reasons beyond me, I managed to stumble into a light sleep, only waking when my door began shaking aggressively. I woke again at 5 and just laid in my bed. It was silent, but I couldn't fall back to sleep. After an hour, I heard the other door start up again. Light was shining out through my window, and I found courage in that to get up and investigate. I opened my door and found my cat had been locked in the other room. Her paw was grabbing at the underside of the door, and she meowed when she heard my door open. I let her out and went back to my room to lay down again. Even though I was basically trapped in my room all night, I felt safer in there knowing it couldn't come in. If she was locked in the other room all night, it would account for the banging on the door, but not just mine. The doors didn't bang simultaneously, so vibration is out. I even tried to debunk it before I went to work, and I couldn't get them both to shake at the same time. not even a little. So there is no way it could shake violently on their own. I don't think whatever is here is evil, maybe a little mischievous, but after thinking about it, I think it was just trying to get me to let my cat out of the other room. Well, that's a kind of an interesting thought, I guess, on that. Now, Ryan, were you able to pick up on that?
I did, and I agree. That's an interesting take on what could have prompted that kind of activity. Obviously,
The cat manifested some kind of shadow creature to fucking knock on the doors.
yeah, clearly
Let me the fuck out!
it created its own thought form.
That's one hell of a cat.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, obviously, this woman is pretty sure that her home is haunted, or she has some kind of a entity existing in her home.
Well, it's like this, right? If a person broke in, or two people, it would have to be two because there was two doors kind of going back and forth. I can't see them just like locking a cat in a room and shaking the door handles. I'm sure if something was missing, she would have mentioned that. But it's very strange that she kind of described it as the doors were vibrating, and one door would vibrate, then the other door would vibrate.
Yeah, I'm kind of well, in my mind, I have like, if you grab the doorknob or the door handle, however your door is designed, and somebody just violently shaking it back and forth. I mean, that would scare the shit out of me if I woke up in the middle of the night with somebody going to town on my door like that. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it wasn't a burglar. There was no, like you said, there was no mention of anything missing or anything like that. I mean, vibrating objects is such a common theme. The vibrating jumping tables and seances.
It is, and the thing that is most comes to my mind with its association is the human body, or the spirit, I should say, because especially people who astrally project, right? That's often a thing that they associate is the vibrating feeling when they leave or when they enter their body.
Yeah, right before you pop out, there's a violent vibration,
right?
Supposedly.
Right, and like all the theories and stuff on how the human spirit vibrates at a specific frequency and stuff like that. In fact, it even to go so far as something a lot of people hear before they have a near-death experience could be attributed to vibrating, and that's a buzzing sound that they hear in their ears.
Hum or buzzing.
Yeah. So, like, again, we have that. I guess I don't know how you describe it. That's what comes to my mind, but again, I don't know how to apply that to vibrating doors.
I wonder what prompted her to jump to the conclusion that the entity was, looking to get her attention to let the cat out. Cats have historically been associated with spirits and non-physical entities in mainly in Egyptian culture, but several other cultures as well. So it's interesting again that we have this connection between possible spiritual activity and cats, and that they may be linked in regards to the cat really wanted out, and the spirit felt compelled for some reason to try and draw attention to that.
Maybe the cat was its master, right? Because
or its friend,
or its friend. I would help my cat Fry. If I was a spirit and he was locked in a room, I would help him.
Of course. Or if you were the spirit. Just a quick question for all you out there. How's the audio and video quality? Is anybody noticing any drops? Because I'm getting a drop in Will's voice sometimes when he's talking. It sounds kind of robotic.
That sounds like your internet's not streaming it fast enough.
Yeah, it could be that my wife is
Well,
on
well,
the
you're sending,
internet
you're sending
downstairs.
your signal to me here,
Yeah.
your video and your audio. Anyway, if anybody, I guess, is having any issue, feel free to pipe up in here, and not that we can do anything about about it, but flawless so far. Okay, so it's down to Ryan's internet. That's what I'm picking up.
I would imagine that my wife is on the computer downstairs.
And
All right.
All right, and if she wasn't, let's just blame her anyway, because what are wives for if not for blaming everything? I'm glad mine's gone to bed. Okay, what the fuck just happened? All right, so I still got 2 more stories to go through here. Let's see. Well, that's just, and we might even do more. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So this is again, another story from Amethyst. And I just want to shout this out now. I probably should have said it earlier, but I guess more people being here, this is good. Where Ryan and I can't see everything, especially me while I'm reading. If you have any questions or something like that, maybe when we're done all the stories, we'll have like a, back and forth, and anything that you guys wanted to ask or whatever. My eyes will be on the chat, and then we can, Ryan too will be totally focused, and we can do a one-on-one kind of a thing with you guys. All right.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to try and read and speak, talk in the chat, and
For sure.
especially after a long day. But
For sure.
okay, so this other story is from the same woman.
Yep, same woman, Amethyst. Okay. So, now this story, she has a lady. Sorry. She she has a name. The Lady in Black. Okay. So, again, I'm reading from her point of view. I'm just saying this, so like, no, if I say my vagina, and I'm not actually saying I got a vagina. All right. So, my friend has been telling about his old place of residence as a child and all the odd things that have taken place there while he was growing up. For the sake of privacy, I won't be using any real names, although the events that I'll be writing about have claimed to be true. My friend, and in quotes, obviously not his real name, William Mercer, was 5 years old when he and his family moved to a desolate little town called Bruce, somewhere in northwest Florida. This place is so small that it is not even located on any map, and therefore it is safe to say that it is a real place. Scratch that. Google Earth butchered that place. Anyway, it's a real place. In a patch of woods, 2 roads met in a tee-off. One from Highway 20, the other from Highway 81. And among all those old houses located in that patch of land, he moved into the property that was at the corner. He says that nothing interesting took place the first couple of years living there. He had been there about 8 or 9 when he first saw the lady. He had just gotten home from school and was sitting at the dining room table. I lost my spot. Just give me give me a second. Wait, no. Okay, yeah. He was sitting at the dining room table doing his homework and had glanced out of the window across the room. There is the clearing of the bushes where a woman was standing at the road staring at him, and she was dressed all in black, similar to conservative funeral garbs that covered the entire length of her body. Anyway, she appeared considerably old. William called out to his mother, stating that someone was outside, and his mother rushed to look out the window and was frightened at the woman's appearance. After that, William's mom told his dad about the event, and he went out to one of the neighbors named Bert and inquired about the lady's nature. Bert said that little was known about her, but not to mess with her, to stay inside and wait for her to go away should she show up. The next night, sometime around 3 in the morning, his parents had woken him up. The entire house was shaking. Objects flying off the walls and across the room. The sound of shattering glass erupted from nowhere, but there was no evidence, no actual physical broken glass. The family gathered into the living room. There was no electricity in the home, but the streetlight shone brightly from the window, and there in the clearing, just like the day before, the woman stood staring at the house, almost like she could see them through the window despite the distance. He says he remembers her standing there, and the light from the street lamp flickered, and she was gone. He then said it was odd and almost dreamlike because after that, everyone and everything calmed down, and the entire family simply went back to sleep like nothing had actually happened. The next morning, William had asked his family if the night before had truly happened, for the house had been picked up as normal. It appeared very normal all of a sudden. They said it had, but seemed rather doubtful about it. But how could the whole house share the same dream? And no one had cleaned up the mess from the night before. How could everybody kind of go about their merry little way after an event like this? The next day, the family had talked to another neighbor named Ray about the little old lady, but after they told him what happened the night before, he didn't want anything to do with them. But who would want to be associated with anybody who seemed to be targeted by a witch? A few days after the incident, William began to sleepwalk. He said he normally woke at the front door, fidgeting with the locks. Said he felt like he needed to go outside, but couldn't and didn't. A few nights after, he woke to locking and unlocking the door with the same desire to go outside. The third night, he said he knew that he was sleepwalking, but could remember getting up, walking outside to the end of the road where he felt her there, and when he woke, she was there in front of him. He said she had long black hair and a smooth pale skin. She wasn't old. He couldn't remember her eyes, but that she was looking down at her hands as she held something in them and looked up to him. After that, everything blurred. He remembered turning around and heading back to his house and falling asleep. But it felt weird, and he never saw her again. So that was an interesting one, Ryan, if you managed to pay attention that time.
It's just something about your voice. I just can't.
You're just, yeah.
So this is something that has come up in countless stories. And one's like the whole gambit. Bigfoot is one that I find very interesting, where this comes up. UFOs and various different paranormal, spiritual kinds of experiences. But the scenario where something bizarre, completely out of the normal is happening, and everyone just says, okay, well, that was weird, and turns around and goes in their room, goes to sleep, wakes up in the middle of the night while they're camping, and sees some huge humanoid thing stomping around the campsite, and then just rolls over and goes back to sleep. It's something that I never ever noticed in all my years of reading all of this kind of stuff. It's not that I didn't notice it, but it's not something that I paid a lot of attention to. But since we started doing the show, it has popped up in so many different stories that I think it's significant. And I know that, I got hiccups now. Fantastic.
Well, let me add to something that you said while you regain your composure. One of the main elements that you pointed out that I was thinking, like the second I read it, was this whole phenomenon where somebody experiences something fantastical, or multiple people, and then they just go back to bed. Like, like something amazing just happened, but fuck it, I'm going to bed, right? And the first story that came to mind was, now I can't remember their first names, but the Wiener brothers. And I remember that because it's such a, it sounds funny, right? The Wiener brothers. But them and two or three other guys were camping. And that's what happened. It's like they saw a UFO and they all went out to, investigate it. And they were all abducted. Like, they were all put under, the regressive hypnotherapy. And they all gave the same story. They were able to retell like very specific details, but that was the thing that really stood out to me, was the fact that they all agreed, like they talked about it after, and it was like so strange that they remembered coming back and their fire had gone out, a fire that should have gone for was able to go for hours based on the wood that was there. And anyway, they all got back. They all were aware that this happened, and they all just went to bed and they didn't talk about it for such a long time. And you'll see this with a lot of different stories, where sometimes where there is multiple people who experience the paranormal, and they if it's not like they just go to bed, it's like after the event happens, they just like ignore it, or they don't talk about it, and they go home or wherever they go, and like it doesn't come up for months, right? Or if at all, it's like they just pretend it never happened. And
I can say that is a very real thing, because that's precisely what happened to myself when my cousin and I had that experience in the bog with the laughter and all that. And us apparently disappearing from that area with no tent, no ATV or anything. My cousin and I did not speak about that forever. Many years. And to this day, the person I really want to question is my uncle, and there always seems to be something that just is almost like a block, almost like there's a barrier, there's a block. And I've given this scenario, or this phenomenon, some thought, and I know that a couple of times I've read that people or the mind, will put up blocks and barriers and try to avoid things that are outside of its regular schedule programming. Likewise, that extreme events that are just completely out of the ordinary apparently can cause this instantaneous fatigue, right? Like the brain just can't deal with it. And that seems counterintuitive, because
you can't process it if you don't deal with it.
Yeah, and I mean that seems to fly in the face of any kind of biological evolutionary survival mechanism. Really, I mean you should really want to GTFO, not lie down and go to sleep.
Right, and again, like as you said, maybe the most popular of the examples given is in UFO stories, right? It's almost like they I don't know if they do hypnotic things, or if they put some kind of a chemical in. There's some kind of block, like there's some kind of a block that somehow affects these people where they don't want to.
We're assuming is either technology or some form of telepathy.
Right. And the other interesting thing with the story is the fact that the sleepwalking part, right? I mean, people sleepwalk, but in this case we have a witch, and it seems, well, we know that William was sleepwalking to the door, and he remembers certain things like waking up at the door with the locks, fidgeting with the locks, and also he does remember at some point actually going over and meeting the witch. She had something in her hand. He couldn't see what it was. He doesn't know what she was actually doing. But that's not the first story I heard where somebody was unconsciously, I guess being led or controlled to some extent. What could she have possibly been giving him? Like, what was his part in this? Why would she even go there to see him?
Well, and I mean that's the inscrutable nature of the paranormal. That's what makes the paranormal what it is. That is so far outside of logic and what you know. A lot of times, it doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason as to why these things are happening or specific logic to the events and how they transpire. And I think while that's very frustrating for anybody trying to learn and research and try to get to the bottom of the mystery of what is the paranormal, looking at it as a whole, I think that possibly that in itself could be a clue that the extreme, just total bizarreness of some of these stories and some of these things that happen um, indicate that in at least in some cases we may not be dealing with
A full deck.
a human
Just fucking with you.
a human intelligence, which is why the while sometimes the things may look human or seem human, or at least on the surface appear to have a human-like intelligence or a human-level intelligence, that ultimately the psychology of the beings and entities behind a lot of this paranormal activity is alien. It's far removed from human psychology, and that's why there's such a difficulty and straight up just impossible to figure out what the fuck it is they want, what they're doing. You look at the just the straight up craziness of what happened at Skinwalker Ranch. I know we use that as an example a lot, because, well, I mean, it covers
Everything.
pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And why would it put a post hole digger 30 feet up in a tree? Why would it take the woman's clothing and towels and hide it in stoves and microwaves and crawl spaces and whatever?
You know what it reminds me of? What would we do in a video game, fucking around like GTA or something like that? If we could do that, we would, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right? If you were an alien entity and this was like your sandbox and you could do whatever you wanted, it would be fun to do that and see people's reactions. You know what? Let's just see what their face would be. Let's put a fucking van in a tree and just see what they think, right? Why not? I mean, it's just as plausible, really. I mean, if you're looking at it, it would have to be like a jokester, trickster kind of scenario, because it wouldn't make sense any other way. We're gonna have fun with them.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that it could be a huge fallacy or a huge mistake to try and interpret some of these events through the psychology of a human being. That the mind behind or the mind of these entities that may be behind some of the really weird paranormal events, that while we try to anthropomorphize it, we try to put a human spin on it, that may be the very wrong thing to do. And we've established all these archetypes, like the trickster and all these different paranormal archetypes, but that's a very human construct. When in fact we may be dealing with minds that are so far removed from human psychology that to try to interpret their goals and what it is they're trying to achieve, looking through
It's
or
like,
looking at it
yeah,
in the way of a human psychology may be totally false.
that could be. It's like trying to teach a dog how to play guitar, right? One thing it did remind me of, though, the witch part, right? The fact that she was getting him to come out and meet her, do something, right? It brought to mind, remember the desert witch story, where the witch would get people from the cafe to follow her, or get them to drive her out to some strange spot in the desert and do this meditation and stuff like that. Again, it's this whole idea of bringing someone somewhere for something that only they know why, right? So,
Or at least there's an attempt to isolate them away from, their home, their safety, other people, get them away, get them, when we're dealing, and isn't it interesting that we've come across several different witch stories
oh yeah.
over the last few months. Witches are making a real big resurgence by the look of things. Um,
So, before we jump into the next story, I just wanted to say hello to everybody who came in that I didn't get to say hello to. So I know Mrs. Kruger and Govey, Fakri, and Josie
and
and
Andrew,
Gavin, and a whole bunch of people that just come in while I'm reading, and So hello everybody. We got a lot more people than when we started, obviously. So I do have. Hell, I got a submission while we were doing this. Maybe we'll even cover that too. So
my friend Sean, who's watching this or listening with us, just text me and said, "I get why aliens experiment on us, but what's the ghost fascination with flicking the lights on and off?"
well, I can tell you that my son Isaac loves it. Like if I got like the flashlight out, and he's a baby, so. But anyway, like flashlights and stuff like that, he loves it. He goes wild for it. Maybe ghosts are like that. Maybe they're afraid of being in the dark all the time, and I don't know. But so let's jump into the last story here, and then we'll, maybe I mean we'll see what time is like. Maybe we'll cover another one or two. But if you have any questions or anything like that after this story, I'm gonna do like a short kind of segment here where you guys can speak directly to us, and we'll try to answer anything that you have.
An AMA.
An AMA. Okay. All right. So this is Amethyst's last story that she submitted there. Yeah. So this is called The Place of Nothingness. I like that. Sounds like the void. All right. The Place of Nothingness. This is a true story, so this will by no means be a terrifying read. It will not creep you out. It's meant to enlighten you of something very real that happened to me. Maybe you can relate. Maybe I had interpreted my experience all wrong, in which case this would indeed make things creepy. I was a child, probably in kindergarten or first grade. My family had recently moved from Massachusetts to Florida, and although I was starting over socially, I was very happy. I made friends easier in my new neighborhood, and my very first friends happened to live right across the street. They were an odd sort in the sense that their parents were religious freaks, which made my mother uncomfortable since she was raised in a religious cult and didn't want, her kids to be exposed to all these sort of fanatics. My sister and I, first friends there were siblings. A young boy our age who was engrossed in military, guns, and war, and his little sister who probably suffered from a mild mental illness. There's someone to stalk you, Ryan. Sorry.
Oh, great.
Anyway, they weren't allowed over at our house, so when we wanted to play with them, we had to go out or go over there. We played mostly in their yard and back porch. Their backyard was large, and they had a small fort and swing set, which ended up being the focal point of most of our games. One day, my sister and the boy were playing on the fort, and I was done playing whatever game they were playing, so I went over to the swings and started to twist and swing and sway from side to side as I spun all around. I was wearing one of the boy's many military hats, and it had fallen over my face at some point, and it casted a strange hue, like I was in space, and I closed my eyes. Suddenly, it felt like the ground beneath me disappeared, and I was instantly terrified to let go of the chain, lest I fell into the nothing around me, or I just floated endlessly in the vacuum of darkness. I knew I had to be on the swing. I could feel myself sitting on the seat. I could feel the chains in my tight grip, but it felt like I was suddenly somewhere else. I had done something in such a way to be somewhere else. I couldn't speak, but I managed to open my eyes and was blinded by flashes of brilliant color. It felt like I was floating. I was sideways. I was upside down. I was in the space of nothingness with these flashes engulfing me from all sides. I tried to put my feet on the ground to stop the swing, but there was nothing there. I wanted to scream, but could not open my mouth. I don't even think I could breathe. Somehow I managed to pry my vice grip from the chain and snatched the hat off my face. The backyard was back. I was sitting in the motionless swing, firmly planted to the ground. The sound of my sister's delighted squeals and my friend's fit of laughter returned, and I realized I had heard absolutely nothing during my terrifying experience. I don't know how long I had been sitting in the swing while I had induced this hallucination, but it would seem that it was a short period of time, as they were unaware and unconcerned of what was happening. I quickly called out to them and rushed over to the fort with shaky legs. They didn't believe me when I told them what had happened to me, but my friend was very interested in trying out for himself to see if he could mimic what had happened to me. I told him exactly what I did and what order in hopes to recreate the event, but he was unable. My sister tried and tried again as well, to no avail. I have no idea what happened to me. I can only speculate that I managed to hallucinate due to sensory overload. It's just strange that no one was able to recreate any form of hallucination afterwards, even by following the same layout I had done originally. And apparently my friends told their parents what had happened, because they were not allowed we weren't allowed over there to play shortly after this happened. So, religious fanatics, right? Won't even let their kids go to space. So yeah, that is kind of weird, especially if, like, I mean, her feet couldn't touch the ground. She's seeing a hue of space. Also, the fact that she couldn't hear anything. That's bizarre. Ryan, what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, to me, it almost sounds like she spontaneously entered an altered state. I mean, I've spent years practicing different types of meditation, and I've experienced similar things, completely bizarre sensations, and in a few cases have wound up in kind of a suspended state, where I've gotten stuck in in not the hallucination, but stuck inside of the meditative state, where I'm like, okay, I'm here. How do I wake myself up from this? And honestly, a couple of times I kind of panic a little bit. Now, I mean, this was many, many years ago now, but it can be rather unsettling. And I'm trying to picture the scenario. They have the beret on, and it kind of slides down over her face while she's twisting and spinning, and all of this, and to me, it definitely sounds like an altered state, a rather intense one. And
I think
the
that
flashes of light, I'm not sure of. Other than that, I would have said that is very similar to the void that some near-death experiencers experience.
well, one of the interesting things that I find, like you said, like you have experienced these things during intense meditative states, but you had to meditate to get there. Whereas
Indeed.
her, she's just like swinging on a swing and spinning, and it's just bang, right? And the other thing, like just the fact that she wasn't able to touch the ground with her feet, the fact that she wasn't able to hear anything, it's just a really bizarre. Like you said, it could be a sense of state for sure, but
Well, and that's the thing. We're talking about, young children here. When I first started meditating, I was in my early teens, but already, how would you put it? I'd already been greatly affected by society, right? Like I've already lived, 15 years of worth of programming. Um, with children, we see this in the paranormal world a lot, where there seems to be an ease of experience, or their ability to see things and hear things and experience things seem to be heightened, compared to adults, or teens, or whatever.
that's a good
I
point,
mean,
Brian. That's a very good point. Because children are often. I mean, that's why they're used so often in movies for this kind of thing. But children are often said to see and experience things that we seem to be programmed out of as we get older. Like, that shit's not real. Focus on your school. Focus on this and that and the other thing. And we lose that ability, right? But I can tell you right now, as a new dad, with a 4-month old baby, man, I'm telling you, he sees something in the rooms quite often. He smiles at it, he follows it, he laughs at it. And it's not just me seeing it. My wife sees it. My mom sees it. My wife's mom sees it. Or my mother-in-law, whatever.
they see it, or they see Isaac reacting to.
They see Isaac reacting to it. Just, you know what? Just like how my cat can do that too. I've seen my cat do that. Meowing at things. But like the thing with my son is that he can show more emotion than my cat, right? He can smile, he can laugh, he can reach at it, and he does. He does do that. Like, there's no way he don't see something up there, because it's just a ceiling. Why would he react like that? Right? Like, normally to get that reaction to him, you got to be talking to him and poking him and tickling him and doing the stuff that parents do. But there are these occasions when he does that, and there is absolutely nothing there, right? And you can watch him follow it, like he follows it, right? So, just like my cat. So yeah, I do think there's something. Actually, I'll tell you something. Always pops in my head. Like, if I'm putting him to bed, and I'm because my wife right now is sleeping in that room with him. Just so there's no, like, we're terrified of like SIDS and stuff, right? But anyway, like, if she's not there, we have the monitor there, right? And no matter what other room I'm in the house, like, it's one of those visual monitors, you can see them. And I'm always scared I'm going to look at that and there's going to be like some shadow being or something like that in there with them.
A glowing set of eyes staring back from over the edge of the crib.
Yeah, because it's like that low quality black and white feed, right? It's like, it looks like something that would be in a movie. So I'm like,
That found footage kind of stuff that we've been trained to be scared of now.
And see, Mrs. Kruger is saying the same thing with that. Her granddaughter is doing the same thing, and she will be a month on Thursday. So, like, I really do think that it's something about babies. In fact, when I brought this up with my mother-in-law, she was saying how my nephew Jaron, did the same thing. He was doing the same thing. But one time when he was doing this, he was all smiling, watching this thing in the corner of the room. And all of a sudden, it was like, whatever it was he saw gave him a huge fright. Because it's like he jumped and then he started crying, like bawling. Right? So, yeah, man, I think kids are... I think it's an ability that we're perhaps all born with. But with our way of life, we lose that ability. They said the same thing for like, what's it called? Like ESP and stuff like that, right? It's like we once had this ability, and then through not using it and through evolution, we've lost that ability to use, except for every now and then. Every now and then we have somebody that still has those abilities, like they're mediums or they're empaths or what have you. Every now and then there are people that are able, I guess they're born with it, and or they're able to retain that part. Maybe they start using it at a young age. They discover what it's used for, and through practice they keep it. They don't lose it like everybody else.
So you think it could be like a vestigial body part, like if some people are born with tails?
No, I don't think it. You know what I think? Like, we know it's in the brain, right? Like, we know that it's a mental thing. And the brain is all chemicals, right? And different things that you do will affect the balance of those chemicals. One example to be, say depression or something like that, right? So, like, if you go to, like, group therapy or something like that for depression, they'll teach you all about thought patterns and things like that, and how, like, when you focus on the negative, how it's a repeating process, and the more you think like that, the more basically you program your brain to be like that. And we know that it's chemicals that affect the way that you are in this, right? They affect your mood, they affect how you think. So if by changing your thought process, you can actually change over time and reprogram your brain to not be depressed, then you're literally altering the chemicals in your brain, right? So perhaps over time, like we had like ESP or, maybe even an inkling, right? When we're born with it, but because we don't use it, we literally affect the chemicals that would be used to do that. Like there's no chemicals there. We don't use it. It's gone somewhere else.
It's not even just chemicals, because you actually physically create, strengthen, or create pathways through the different regions of the brain. And these pathways, like you said, the more, if you're a depressed person, you're focusing on being depressed and thinking about all the depressing things, then you're physically reinforcing those pathways. It's like somebody walking through a grassy field. If you take the same route every time, eventually you're going to wear a very obvious trail in the field. But if wearing that trail through the field gets you stung by bees all the time, then maybe you should take a different path. You create a different neural network, and because your brain is comprised of all these different regions that are responsible for different activities, whether it's memory or emotion or whatever. As you reinforce these pathways, it will literally tie different parts of your brain more closely together.
Yeah.
So, more than just being chemical, there is an actual physical building of structures. That's what sometimes the brain is referred to as being plastic for that reason.
Yeah.
So, you are having some doubts that she experienced a altered state. What do you think it could have been then?
If it's not an altered state, Twilight Zone. I don't know. Like, I mean, that's it makes me think of an example that happened to me that I could never fucking explain. I'm gonna try, and it's gonna sound ridiculous, Okay, I might have told you one time, Ryan, but I don't know if it made much sense then either. One time when I was in college, and I was coming back from lunch, and I was parking in the parking lot, there was this guy, and like I could see, like it was almost like I kind of saw it as I was turning into the parking spot, and I even paused and fucking watched it for like, I don't know, half a minute before like I turned the car off and shit like that. But it was like he had this flickering black shadow on his face, like just boom, 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 like pounding on it. And I thought for sure I was gonna look up and see like some kind of like a fan or something like that on the building, where the light was, coming from. And
Sure.
nothing. And not only that, but the shadow wasn't anywhere else. It was only on like most of his face. I don't know what that was, if that was a hallucination on my part or what, but how do you explain that? And like what could that even mean? It's just so fucking weird. It's so small it's almost not worth mentioning, yet so strange that I can't explain it.
You know what it sounds like to me? A death aura.
Death or so you think he died?
Well, it's possible. I know years and years and years ago, I heard a story. I think it was a program, like a TV program, talking about these real experiences where somebody was about to get on an elevator, and the doors opened up, and there's I think a man standing there, and they just kind of glanced at the guy right before this person went to step onto the elevator, and they see this black shroud just completely covering him in like you would imagine an aura, just like a gossamer sheet, and like the person instantly got this very you know negative, dark feeling from him, and stepped back and let the doors close, only to have the elevator fucking let go and crashed.
But was the black or the shadowy stuff that he saw, was it flickering or?
I don't believe so, but I mean, our ability to perceive some of these things, like you were saying, that in your instance, maybe your ability to perceive that aura just for whatever reason was like uh, the perfect alignment of brain chemicals and state of mind and everything, and you saw this, you were able to perceive it for a few moments, and your ability was wavering, so it's kicking in and out, in and out, in and out. But that's that was the first thing that jumped into my mind anyway.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, it could be. I didn't get any negative feel. I was at a distance though, and I just can't explain it. It was really weird, and again, it's small. I mean, all of our stories sound so fucking like tame and just bad when you compare it to the stuff that we cover, right? But whatever. I live
well,
for your
that's that.
stories vicariously. I live through you.
Well, I mean, that's one of the it's one of the things about the paranormal, though, is that it could be so in your face where there's spirits throwing things around the room, or Bigfoot comes charging out of the forest, or lights in the sky and aliens and this kind of thing, where at the same time the experiences can be so subtle, where it's these little bizarre, seemingly impossible things that happen, that I know I had my book in the other room, and the door's closed, and then I come downstairs and my book's on the kitchen table. Now that's a very small, seemingly insignificant paranormal event, but at the same time, the implications of an event like that are fucking mind numbing. Right now, we're talking about the transpositioning of the spontaneous positioning of matter from one place to another, or invisible entities able to phase matter through other matter without having any effect. The implications just can go wild, or even more bizarre than that. And I mean, all it is a book going from one room to another room, but already we're talking about intense quantum physics level weirdness, and that's that's the beauty of the paranormal, and paranormal stories. Sometimes the smallest, seemingly most subtle phenomenon can lead to the wildest implications and thoughts.
Oh, for sure. Well, the truth is, if we figured out the answer to a lot of these mysteries, they would probably cease to be interesting, just like a good card trick, right? I mean, they look amazing, and sometimes when you see how it actually works, it's like, are you fucking serious? That's,
Loses all the magic.
It's like, it's not even like a clever trick. It's like stupid, and you feel like an idiot because you didn't figure it out. So before, actually, let's do our question time with everybody before we do anything new. So for everybody new that came in, that I didn't say hello to, hello. We're gonna do, like, if there's anything that you wanted to ask us, or questions about the story or anything like that, now's the time to do it. If nobody shouts anything out, I'm just gonna move on to a story. Come on, people.
Well, that's the tough thing with the delay, and then somebody has to.
Well, it's the delay, and I'm always conscious of like dead space because someone's gonna be listening to this after the fact, and there's gonna be this spot where there's nothing there, and they're gonna be like, "This is fucking garbage." dislike.
I'll log into all 16 of my YouTube accounts just like this one video.
Hey man, people do it. Sad people.
So a small missing and being found in plain sight. My friend Sean messaged me and said the lost left sock theory. We tend to think of the paranormal as this wild, fantastical event, but I think that more often than not, the average person's interaction with the paranormal is so much more subtle than that on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week or year-to-year basis. However often these Fortean events, these paranormal events occur, and that's one of the beautiful aspects, I guess, to the paranormal, is that these events force us to think of our world differently. That we're very comfortable as human beings, as modern human beings. We're very comfortable dealing with a very ordered, labeled world. This is a car. This is a road. This is a building. I pay my taxes. I drive this route to work. Everything is very ordered and understandable. But then out of nowhere jumps these bizarre events. And I know that in the case of cattle mutilation, when we spoke to Chris O'Brien, he looked at cattle mutilation and the possible implication of it and why it happens, that he felt that it had something to do with forcing us to change our consciousness about reality, forcing us to, as a species, to go in a different direction in our minds.
So we have a couple of questions here. I'm gonna start doing them, and then if anyone got any more, we'll do them before we get into glitter beards. Oh, Ryan,
what do you mean, ape genes?
Well, you're a smart ape.
You're a smart ape. Well,
Gunther, Gunther. How do you like them bananas, right? Anyway, I will stop myself there. Let's get to the question. So, first of all, this comes from, is it Quizzle? Is that how you pronounce that? I see it all the time. It's a regular, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's Quizzle. All right, so she, don't get mad at me if I don't remember, asked, why do some people have experiences all the time while others like me never do? That's a good question. Because, I mean, truthfully, Quizzle, not much happens to me. I mean, I got a couple small, you guys have heard our podcasts and stuff like that. I mean, they are really small deal compared to, like, the stories that we get and stuff. And okay, Quizzle, and you're a woman. Okay, my apologies. So, Quizzle, I often ask myself the same thing with, like, my wife, for example. My wife, I mean, she's not even really interested in this stuff, really. I mean, kinda. I mean, she'll kind of tag along if I'm, like, going on about something, but she's not, like, super into it. And she experiences more than me. Like, I mean, there's been more times than I can count that she's come home and something's happened. Like, I remember one time when she was at work and she worked at a hospital. She was actually doing the admissions in the emergency department, and they got the security screens, and she saw like a shadow person come in on it and all this stuff, and she, like, there's just so many stories that she's told me like that, and I want to experience stuff like this, and it's like nothing. Like, the stuff I get is like that little fucking sound upstairs where it sounds like my cat jumped off a bed. Right? I mean, and Ryan and I both got that, and it's like, it's really not that interesting. But that's the truth. Like, I don't know why. I like to think that I'd be susceptible to it. I mean, I'm so open to the paranormal. I mean, it's a huge fascination of mine. So much so that how effed up stories started was like, my love for the paranormal and Ryan's love for the paranormal. So why don't I see this stuff? And I really don't know why. It's not fair.
It really, I mean, it's one of these things where it really depends on what stream of thought you take on the paranormal. Of course, there's the belief that a lot of paranormal events happen in the non-physical world, the non-normal physical world. That for those of us who see and experience paranormal events, we're doing so by looking deeper into the world that goes on, the unseen world that happens around us. And if that's the case, if UFOs and Bigfoot and a lot of these other phenomenon are happening in a reality just slightly out of phase with the one that we consider three-dimensional physical reality, then perhaps it's just as simple as saying that, well, some people are more prone to athletic ability, or some people are better at math, that some people are just intrinsically better at seeing the unseen, that there's some special quality that we as a species haven't nailed down scientifically yet.
And maybe there's like you kind of get better at it with practice or something like that, because like some people, as they have little things happen, but they're able to look into it much deeper. I'll give you a quick example. Somebody who reads tarot cards, right? Like somebody who's adept at it. They can look at a lay and they can tell you a lot of details, right? They can go into all kinds of detail, all kinds of scenarios of what it could mean, and apply it to the person they're doing it to. Whereas somebody who just picks up a card, this is their first time doing a lay, they can't see into it at all. I mean, really, it's just cards. Really, you're just kind of probing your own feelings and thoughts and stuff like that. The cards are just a tool. It's something that we've come back to several times in many podcasts. But it's the individual and how deeply they're able to look into. So what I'm trying to say is somebody, like me seeing that weird thing I mentioned where that guy had like that black shadow thing, right? And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know whatever. But somebody who's like really experienced with this stuff, or somebody who's looks deeper into it, maybe he would see or she would see something much bigger than I do. Like, to me, it's such a small detail, it's almost not worth mentioning. But to somebody else, that maybe they can put it in such a way that it's a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. Should we move on to? I seen a Mandela effect question.
Yeah. There was one more question. I'll repeat it because I copied and pasted it into here. And okay, so Rob Mason asks, a friend of mine theorizes that the Mandela effect may be a phenomenon connected to CERN and the collider. That's actually an interesting. I'll let you pounce on that first, Mr. Science Guy.
So, okay, I've read this theory several times. Is the idea that so the CERN super collider, basically what it does is it takes two particles and accelerates them up to near the speed of light, in the opposite direction. So there's two pathways inside of the super collider, and they accelerate them opposite to one another, boom, 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 until they're nearly to the speed of light. And then, in essence, they switch the tracks. So the particles no longer miss one another. They enter the same chamber, the reaction chamber. And when they collide, there's this explosion of all kinds of new particles, virtual particles, and particles that don't exist normally in our space that we're aware of. And there's a theory that posits that the collision of these particles could, in essence, be creating particles that interact with time, temporal particles, that can move anywhere along the timeline, where normally all particles are subject to the single one-dimensional direct arrow of time that we all experience. But in the cases of these because I mean, you just imagine you have two particles moving at almost the speed of light. That's the speed of light is as fast as anything can go. So the collision of two particles like this, while it may only be individual particles, the amount of energy that's released and the impact that's possibly having on reality could be quite significant. And if these particles can travel back in time, we might be looking at the butterfly beats his wings in Japan, and in Guadalajara, Mexico, it becomes a hurricane. So these little particles are flying back in time to where they shouldn't be, and bumping into other particles back in time, and that slowly builds up and causes macro changes down the road.
Okay, so I'm not going to try to remember what you just said, but I will say this, just as a quick thing here. The whole CERN and the collider, and the idea that it might be affecting time and the past and the future, there has been a lot of theories, actually a lot of interesting things have come of, even conspiracy theories, I guess is the best way to put it, since they started with the collider. But I mean, it goes from like affecting dimensions, like you said, with time, like things changing in the past and the future. There's even like theories that like the government and or higher ups are actually changing the past, changing events of the past to change the future. And I don't know how far people would buy into that stuff, but and there was also the whole thing with apparently like there was some, what was it, Ryan, some kind of religious stuff that was going on at CERN. Um,
Well, yeah, I was gonna bring that up. So
with
there,
Lord Shiva, right? Or they were worshiping Shiva or something like that.
Shiva, yeah, the goddess, the Indian East Indian goddess of chaos and destruction, and um, they actually have a statue of Shiva somewhere on the grounds. I think it's right out front in of the building in CERN, and a bunch of the scientists. Um, Perform this weird like interpretive dance number at some point where it was very reminiscent of some of the rituals associated with Shiva and her cults in India. Now, it wasn't a perfect ritual like how it's done traditionally, but it's very interesting that there's this connection between the two.
I think the
Um,
thing to point out, I guess, concerning the collider, right? Especially because it's such an amazing piece of technology. Um, I don't know whether or not all the different conspiracies are true or not, but if you had such a tool at your disposal, would you not, you know, try to probe the unknown with it in that way? Do you think it's really strictly just, science? What kind of different particles can we get when we bounce this through that? I mean, if you look at Bohemian Grove, for example, like there's this whole bit about different, leaders of our time, the important people, uh, the government, important members of government, the president, all these different people who meet up and
Leaders of business and industry.
worship an owl. Surely that's not something that um, the layman, like the average everyday man, would think that our leaders and our people of business are going to. They're not attending this weird fucking party every year, but there's video of it, right? I mean, it's out there. I mean, you can look at YouTube and see all the stuff on Bohemian Grove, and like the further you dig into this stuff, you'll see that a lot of the world elites are not only what's the word? What's the fucking word I'm looking for? Not bizarre, eccentric, right? They're not only eccentric, but they often do have very strange interest in things like that. I mean, there's all kinds of theories that if you're that big in your industry, then you made a pact with something, right? Whether that's the devil or someone else, well, that's up for speculation. But yeah, I mean, that just like Bohemian Grove, nobody believed that could be a thing, and there's video, and now, so why would we dismiss CERN, right?
Well, and that's the we can postulate about the effects that CERN is having on the universe because I mean, our study of particle physics at that level is so basic that basically what they're doing is, imagine trying to learn how airplanes work by crashing them into one another and then studying the resulting debris. That's essentially what we're doing in modern particle physics and particle research. That it's so difficult for us to study particles and what they're comprised of and what they can do, that the best that we can do right now is move them to a near unimaginable speed and then crash them together and study the resulting mess that happens. Um, the the amount of power that goes into it and the amount of energy that results from it, really, I mean, it seems unlikely that it would be affecting the past, but I mean, it's not something that I think we can exactly discount.
And maybe it's not even an accident. I mean, they're running tests all the time. Who knows, right?
Well, exactly. Now, I mean, I guess the one argument against it being deliberate is, why would you build a several billion-dollar piece of technology just to go back and fuck with the spelling of a couple of child,
that might just
right?
be an unfortunate side effect.
Side effect,
Right?
sure, yeah.
You know.
They're actually doing something to. So I mean, that's the CERN angle of the Mandela effect. Now, of course, there's a dozen other possibilities for something like that. I mean, the common, the one that is the mainstream explanation is misremembering. And while I think that sure, that's a possibility, there seems to be a rather ubiquitous agreement amongst those who said, I clearly remember Nelson Mandela dying. I clearly remember it being Bernstein instead of Bernstein.
And some of those things for some people revolve around like very important points in their life, right?
Yes.
So like I can tell you right now, man, like I grew up having the Bernstein Bears and or the Bernstein Bears, whatever. I grew up with them being read to me, and they were a big part of my childhood. And to me, it was different than it is now. Like I'm reading those books to my own son right now, right? I mean, I remember the stories and all that stuff. And another thing for me was Dick Tracy. I always remember a yellow trench coat. Always remember that. Where in Time,
Yeah.
or not Dick Tracy. Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. Everybody argues that I had it confused with Dick Tracy, but no, man. Like I remember those. I remember being in school, in elementary school. Remember they used to give out those book order things every year, and like you could take it home, and everybody could pick the books that you were going to order at school. And then when that day came, it was cool, right? You go up and get like the books that.
Oh yeah, they used to do those book fairs.
Right. So like I remember that. I distinctly remember, like, I mean, it was the yellow trench coat, the hat. I remember that, but that's apparently not how it was. Right? Go figure. So there is one last question that we got that this is kind of related. I mean, it's kind of related. It's in the same field of thought. Paragoster asked if some of the people that we see are actually time travelers from another dimension. And that's something that...
Say that again, sorry?
He wonders if some of the people we actually see are time travelers from a different dimension. And so the first thing I'm going to mention is like some of the pictures that we've all seen, right? Like we've all come across those black and white photos where like there's this guy with, these newish sunglasses and like a cell phone. In like the 20s or something like that, where he just looks so out of place, right? We've all seen that photo and photos like it, and we get stories from people. Like I remember one we covered where these two guys, remember they were gonna pick up a washing machine or something like that, and they drove down this, they got the directions to the guy's house to pick it up, or an old car or something anyway, and anyway they ended up on this strange road trying to find it, and when they got there, they had seen like there wasn't any other cars. There was like horse and carriage. There were dirt.
Oh yes, that's right.
Right, there were dirt roads. Everything looked older, and he mentioned like specifically when they went past the horse and carriage, there was like a sack of potatoes or something on it. All the way that they do it back then. That we don't have, those same sacks that. Well, I guess we do, but okay, we don't have a horse and carriage, right? Anyway,
it's not usual to see those things together,
right? And everybody was in like period clothing and stuff like that. And anyway, when they finally turned back and got out of there, they discovered like all this time passed that didn't make sense. Like they were looking at their watches and like that was off, and the car they went to pick up or whatever it was had been sold because they were gone for so long. That's just one example of so many examples that we've even gotten on people who have seen people in period clothing, people out of time. So, like, the question, do we think that they're from time travelers from a different dimension? It's a fun thing to speculate on. Like, if you had the ability to travel in time, wouldn't it be extremely important? I'm just assuming that, like, having the ability to time travel would be such a fucking important technology that whatever country came up with it, they wouldn't want their enemies to know, right? So it would be super important to not get seen in pictures and stuff like that with, obvious technology from the future. And, like, this guy, like the guy with the sunglasses and the cell phone, like, I mean, he was like this big, like, celebratory event. It seems like
wasn't that at like a Charlie Chaplin movie?
I can't remember exactly, but it was something like that. And
yeah, there was lots of other people involved.
It's like he would have had to go out of his way to get on camera, right? It would be like, here's a memento to myself in the future, right? So
photo bomb some picture from history
for sure. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess if there's such thing as time travel, perhaps.
See, I would think that if time travel was an established thing like that, time police would be fucking everywhere, right? Like you would not be allowed to go back and tamper with history, but that's supposing that moving through time is possible in the way that we think of it. There's this arrow of time that moves in one direction, and when movies do time travel, the rest of the world is moving this way, and then time travel lets you hop back to a previous point. Where, if you remember the story of John Teeter, now the way he described time travel working is that they didn't actually travel through time. It was you going to another dimension where everything was the same as your dimension, except it was 40 years in the future, or 40 years in the past, or 100 years in the future, or 100 years in the past. But otherwise, everything else was exactly the same. And of course, in John Teeter's case, he was going back in time to get his hands on an old IBM computer to replace parts of something that they were using in the future. So in that case, you literally would be a dimensional traveler and a time traveler at the same time, where you're more so moving through dimensions than you are moving through time. But in the case like the many worlds theory, the idea that there's an infinite number of parallel universes, then there would be a universe just like ours,
where your life didn't suck.
Yeah, exactly. Be a universe identical to ours, but 100 years in the future.
For sure.
Right.
So, before, I mean, do you want to do like that little? It's only a little story that came in while we were doing the show. Did you want to cover? Oh shit! I deleted it. Okay, I got it back. Did you want me to? Did you want me to cover that? Yeah, he was watching it. It's from Juggalo. He's watching us right now.
Juggalo J. Yeah, sure.
All right, so we're gonna do Juggalo's story. All right. So he is in the chat. All right. He says, "Hey guys, I'm watching live now, so figured I'd tell a story I've been told. I will share more in the future. I've never known this guy to lie, and I have seen the evidence that's mentioned in this story." So he has a close friend who he will refer to as Tim. He was married 12 years to a woman named Alexia. They would go camping every weekend for the 12 years. Suddenly she passed away due to heart failure. He stopped camping for a year. Finally, he said, "I'm going to go one final time." So he went to their favorite camping site. He stayed 4 days. First 3 days, nothing odd happened. But upon the fourth night, he began hearing human-like footsteps. So he unzipped the tent and, of course, saw nothing. Later in the night, he felt an invisible being snuggle up to him just as his late wife would. I guess it felt like his wife. And so he leaves right then and there. He gets up, he gets home and starts looking through the pictures that he had taken. And upon looking at them, he discovers his wife standing in the background smiling. And in the very next image taken, seconds after she's gone, just then, he hears his cell phone beep. Now, this cell phone had been deactivated for a year. Plus, the battery was fully dead. So he opens the case, looks at the phone, and from a private number, a message read, "I'm glad you went back to the camp. I'm always with you with love in my heart." That's actually kind of gave me goosebumps. That's now, Ron. Did you pay attention to that one?
I certainly did.
All right. So this is a message like when people have a loved one that has passed and they get some sign, I guess, that they're on the other side and they're with them. So let's go through that thought for a second. The fact that if true, she's always with him. And I don't know what I think about that in some sense. Obviously if I died, I guess I'd want to be with my family too, but at the same time I'm thinking, like, is that the afterlife? Is that I'm just a ghost and you get to hang around and watch other people live life and we can't interact? Is there no heaven? Is there no
Fuck that, I'd be off exploring the moon with my ghost body.
Well, yeah, right? So, that's the thing that comes to mind anyway, is that, or maybe that, we have to look at it like some people are, they're not ready to move on, or maybe you're able to be in more spot than one at the same time, right?
Well, that's perhaps there's a mourning period for the dead themselves.
Perhaps.
That, after death, if you're conscious of the fact that you're dead, perhaps just as for people, some people get over the death of a loved one relatively quickly, whereas other people could take years and may never, fully come to terms with it.
I don't know why. I don't know if you heard it this way. when I was reading this, for whatever reason, when I got to the part, it was like, first 3 days, nothing odd happens. And upon the fourth night, this is the way I read it in my head. I almost fucking said it. Upon the fourth night, he began hearing human footsteps. So he unzipped his pants. That's the way. Instead of tent, like I read it as. It just.
That's a little Freudian. I think that may say more about you than anything else there.
It's like I heard footsteps, so I anyway.
You heard footsteps, and you're like, oh, dick's out.
Oh, fuck.
So just likewise, it could explain why there's a huge swath of difference when it comes to spirits, where some spirits are bam, they're gone, whereas for other spirits, they seem to hang on, sometimes for centuries. We see these ghosts and the English castles with spirits in them going back to the Dark Ages, kind of a thing. Kings and queens and ladies and lords and this kind of a thing. Now, stuff like this really depends on the the way you interpret the spirit world. If you take it from a very literal biblical standpoint, I think it very clearly states that any spirits that you come in contact with are are not the spirits of your loved ones. That when you die, you go to heaven, hell, or purgatory, and that's it. There's no coming back here. Um, so whatever beings that you're in contact with through seances or necromancy or whatever are not your loved ones. They're gone. They're unable to interact.
I guess that's wherever your belief falls there, because yeah, I mean that's what the church will have you believe about any kind of spiritual interaction with any entity. It's like, oh, that's not your loved one. That's a demon pretending to be him or her, right? But
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think that though, because there, I know that allegedly like these spirits all know everything, but in an example like this, why, what would the point of that be, right? Like,
Oh well, here we are falling into the trap of trying to interpret the actions of a non-human entity through, through human mindset.
yeah, well, that's all I got. Human mind.
That's all I got to offer. So
I got a
take
human
it or leave
mindset.
it.
you know.
Well, I mean, yes, and that's what makes thinking about non-human entities and their possible psychology what makes that doing that so difficult. It's like trying to um, think about fourth and fifth and sixth dimensions, right? Like you really can only conceive of a three dimensions or two dimensions or one dimension, right? To go to fourth or fifth dimension in your head, it's a logical leap that is just too far for most people. Likewise, when we're dealing with non-human entities, we almost always, and I see this with serious researchers and armchair researchers like ourselves, but almost all the time they try to explain the actions of these entities in very human terms, try to interpret it through the psychology of a human being, and it. I just don't think that is always the case. Now, let me be clear. I think with this story, it's almost certainly this guy's wife. Is almost certainly having this beautiful paranormal experience. You know that that's what it is in my mind. I mean, what's
Read Spike's question.
no, I haven't. Like, I don't know what the fascination and people wanting me to put something in my beard. It's perfect. You don't need to do anything with it. I don't need fucking sparkles or LEDs or batteries or hair gel. It's perfect.
I digress. I think we should have an episode where you experiment with different things in your beard.
I'm not into experimentation, especially when it comes to my facial hair.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're gonna we got 7 minutes left because then I gotta eat and do my night stuff before I go to bed and go to stupid work tomorrow. Um, is there any questions that? I mean, do we want to ask questions? Or do we want to throw beard fanaticism just out on the floor of like different things we can do with Ryan's beard? I mean, it just it seems to be it just seems to be. Well, we got braiding of beards, gel, blinking Christmas lights.
Braiding's fine because the Vikings did it.
Action Bronson. I don't know what that means, but anyway, is there any questions that
I'm just scrolling back through to see if there was
Oh,
anything. There were
I'm
some specific questions that people asked about, the accelerator and that. I apologize if we didn't get to if we missed a question over there. um, oh, beard bun. Oh my gosh.
Princess Leia hairstyle.
Oh, Christ. Time slips
Oh.
and glitches. Again, that's one of those things that falls into a real bizarre variety of the paranormal experience. Um, is it possible for reality to have a glitch in it? Is
I, I,
is there?
you know what? At first, the whole theory sounded, like, I mean, I'd entertain it, but not necessarily buy into it. But I will say this, man. Ever since we've like started really going over all the different details of the things that we experience here and glitches in software and games, emulated reality. I'm really like I can't say either way what I think anymore. Like it almost seems plausible that we're in some kind of simulation somewhere. And part of me
Well,
feels like saying, "Why was I programmed to feel pain?" Right?
yeah. The the numbers, mathematically, when you run the numbers, it's far more likely that we exist within a simulation inside of a simulation than we actually exist in the real universe. And there are some real top minds in the world that think along the same lines. Um, and there does seem to be computer code buried in the very equations that we use to describe the universe around us. Um,
If that's true, right? Like, okay, entertain that thought for a second. That we are
okay,
that we are code, right? So, what kind of a fucking monster would I be in a game like Grand Theft Auto? Because obviously they would have to have been programmed to like we feel pain, we feel and it's nasty, right? We don't like that. We don't like the feeling of fear and adrenaline. So is that equivalent to the code in like an NPC in a Grand Theft Auto game that's like, um, you know, if this happens, you run here. If this happens, you run there. If this happens, you die and blood comes out. Is it, do they feel that? Like, is there, you get what I'm saying or trying to say?
I get what you're saying, but with you're comparing a super advanced quantum computer processed hyper realistic simulation to a video game made for profit and entertainment. Um, if this is a simulation, the reason it exists is to help explain why the universe is the way it is and where it's going. Because if you can model the universe as it is, perfectly as it is, there is a school of thought that with a perfect simulation that you could run the clock forward on that simulation and see where it all goes, how it all ends up, and likewise wind the clock backwards to see all the things that you missed before. So that's the purpose of creating the simulation in the first place. So in order for the simulation to come to the conclusions that you're looking for, you need fear, you need hate, you need disease and famine, and all those things. Um, I think there's a very strong possibility that we are in fact simulated beings in a simulated environment. I know people talk about uh, escaping the simulation, but there's no escape, right? Uh, this is it. We are simulated beings in a simulated universe, and everything that happens to us is not to say that it's not real, um, but it's all happening inside of a hyper complex computer program that's so advanced and so intense that it is literally modeling and tracking every single particle and subatomic particle that existed in the universe in the real universe at the time that the simulation was turned on. Um,
So
so for me, I think it's a very strong possibility, and the numbers would seem to indicate that it's way more likely that we're in a simulation than us being in the real universe.
if that's true, don't you just sometimes want to look at whoever's playing your character and be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? What is this
Well,
guy?"
that's the thing is that you are all the things of free will and sentience and all that still exists. There's nobody playing you. You're playing you. You're behaving as a real flesh and blood being would, with a brain and consciousness and organs and all the rest. You're going through you're going through what you would do if you were a flesh and blood being.
well,
And you know, it's paramount that you don't know that you're in a simulation for the simulation to work properly.
I want a better spawn point, and I want better starting equipment, and I want the silver spoon treatment. I want to
Well,
start with
I guess you should have pre-ordered and got the special pre-order pack edition, right?
yeah, fuck sakes.
Good night, Juggalo. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
Why do
It led to a very interesting stream of consciousness.
for sure? You know, I could talk all night. I mean, Mary just asked a question: why do people have different memories? Um, why?
Brain is a pile of slime and meat and chemicals, and its ability to record and recall events is just as
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for it. I've actually been questioning on that. What's with the fuck David Pallades? Like who's David Pallades? I got to give the story, right?
oh my.
But yeah, guys, I got to get ready and go to bed and go to stupid work tomorrow. But I'm glad that you could all tune in and we could do this interesting show. And some of the stories that I still want to get from you guys. I did get something from somebody, but like I'm still like going through the backlog of submissions and stuff. But if you got a story, something creepy that happened late shift, right? You're working late, you saw something, it's particularly like nurses, maybe you saw something really eerie. I'd like to get those stories. Maybe you're a cab driver and saw something really effed up, but also kind of a new expansion from our typical. We're still gonna be doing 90% paranormal for sure anyway. But if you guys got any stories with really effed up scenarios, like you were almost killed by a murderer and you didn't realize it, you were camping and you had this very bizarre thing turn out, or you witnessed a really bizarre murder, or think along those lines. Just as long as it's creepy and that kind of thing, we'll go through on a case by case basis. Anything that's truly effed up, we want to share it because that's what we're all about. Real life is boring, so we tell effed up stories. That said, thanks everybody for tuning in and saying you like the show and all that stuff, and
especially to all the people who say they like my beard. You guys are the best.
and everybody who's willing to do free work on Ryan's beard in the case of braiding and decorating. That would make for a fun episode.
Yeah, no.
And I'm gonna say that we'll be on next Monday, and truly we should. If I get sick, it'll be Wednesday probably, and if not, just check your email. We're kind of loose with how we do this, so whatevs, right? You'll get a notification. So with that said, good night everybody, and have a good one.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see y'all next week. Have a great night, folks.
And this is Ryan signing out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.